Have you ever wondered how far you would go to save someone you love? In a world where everything has a price, Elena Vega, a brilliant financial analyst, risks everything at an auction for billionaires. What she doesn't know is that the man who pays $5 million for her holds secrets as dark as the desert surrounding his mansion. A crumbling empire, a child with an extraordinary gift, a deadly conspiracy connecting them all. When I discovered that document on his desk, I knew my life would change forever, but I never imagined danger lurked so close. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments and discover in Shadows of the Desert how destiny can be rewritten in the perfect storm. Subscribe now and hit like for more stories that defy the impossible. Elena Vega stood at the edge of the exclusive auction house ballroom, her heart pounding against her ribs like a desperate prisoner. The crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across the marble floor, illuminating the faces of the world's elite, who sipped champagne with practiced nonchalance. Each of them worth more than she could ever hope to earn in several lifetimes. She couldn't believe she was here. Elena Vega, once lauded as Wall Street's most brilliant analyst, now a pariah in the financial world, about to sell herself to the highest bidder. The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 years ago, she had exposed a $4 billion fraud scheme that had implicated some of the most powerful figures in international finance. Her reward had been complete professional destruction. Every door slammed shut, every accomplishment erased. Final preparations, Ms. Vega. A sleek-haired coordinator approached, clipboard in hand. Remember, when the lot number is called, you'll be escorted to the center platform. You are not to speak unless directly addressed by a bidder. Elena nodded mechanically, her fingers trembling as she smoothed the borrowed evening gown that felt like a costume rather than clothing. The seafoam silk whispered against her skin, a reminder of how far she had fallen. Her mind drifted to Miguel, her 8-year-old son, lying in a hospital bed across town. The rare autoimmune condition attacking his nervous system required specialized treatments that her insurance had denied, and her decimated savings couldn't cover. The auction's minimum bid would pay for his entire treatment protocol. That thought alone steadied her shaking hands. "Lot number 17, announced a disembodied voice, and Elena felt herself propelled forward. The spotlight hit her like a physical blow as she ascended the small platform. Faceless figures regarded her from the shadows, their expressions hidden, but their interest palpable. The auctioneer's voice rang out, explaining the terms. 1 year of her companionship, her presence at social functions, her time. The arrangements were always described in such careful euphemisms. As the bidding began, Elena forced herself to focus on the massive floral arrangement at the back of the hall, white orchids and blood-red roses intertwined, beautiful but inherently wrong together, like her presence in this room. 2 million, called a voice from the front row. 2.5, counted another. The numbers climbed rapidly, making Elena light-headed. These sums, these life-changing amounts, tossed around as casually as bids for a painting or sculpture. 4 million, called a deep voice from the shadows at the back of the room. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The voice belonged to a tall figure partially obscured by a pillar, his features impossible to discern. 4.5, challenged another bidder. 5 million, the deep voice countered immediately. The room fell silent. No further bids came forward. "Sold for $5 million to Mr. Hakim," the auctioneer announced, bringing down his gavel with finality. Elena's knees nearly buckled. $5 million. Miguel would get his treatment. They could start over somewhere new. Whatever this year held, it would be worth it. As she was escorted from the platform, Elena caught her first glimpse of the man who had purchased her time. Tariq Hakim stood with commanding presence, his bespoke suit emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean frame. His face remained impassive, amber eyes assessing her with an intensity that made her breath catch. There was something in that gaze, not the entitled leer she'd expected, but something far more complex. "Ms. Vega," he said, his accented voice low and measured as he approached, "I believe we have matters to discuss." Before she could respond, the coordinator appeared with paperwork for both to sign. Elena's hand trembled as she scrawled her signature, the ink a permanent testament to her desperation. "My car is waiting," Tariq stated once the formalities were complete. It wasn't a request but a command. As they exited the auction house, a sleek black Bentley glided to the curb. A broad-shouldered man with a buzzed haircut opened the door for them. "This is Ziad, my head of security," Tariq explained briefly. The man nodded at Elena without expression, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Once seated in the plush interior of the car, Elena finally found her voice. "I need to make arrangements for my son before—" "Your son is being transported to the Hakim Medical Center as we speak," Tariq interrupted. "Dr. Levine, the leading specialist in pediatric autoimmune disorders, will oversee his care personally. The treatment will begin tomorrow." Elena stared at him speechless. "How did you—" "I make it my business to know everything about my investments, Ms. Vega." His tone remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes, a brief flash of what might have been empathy. "Or should I say the analyst who uncovered the Meridian Global fraud?" The mention of the scandal that had destroyed her career made Elena's blood run cold. "That's not something I typically include in my biography these days." "Perhaps you should." For the first time, a hint of a smile touched his lips. It was impressive work, foolish but impressive. The car rolled smoothly through the city streets toward the private airfield where Tariq's jet awaited. Elena stared out the window, watching the city lights blur into streams of color. She had made her choice, signed away a year of her life to this enigmatic man who somehow knew about her past. For Miguel, she reminded herself, for his future. What Elena couldn't know was that their meeting was far from coincidental, that Tariq, Hakim, had come to that auction specifically for her, or that his empire, built on brilliance and ruthlessness, was crumbling beneath his feet. She couldn't know that the documents she would discover in his home would reveal connections between his wealth and the very fraud she had exposed, or that their unexpected encounter would set in motion events that would change both their lives, forever. As the car sped toward the waiting jet, neither spoke. The silence between them was filled with unasked questions and unknown truths, the first threads of a complex tapestry that would eventually bind them together in ways neither could imagine. 3 days after the auction, Elena stood in Tariq's cavernous home office, documents scattered across his mahogany desk. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with fury. The papers she'd discovered while searching for a pen in his study detailed connections between Hakim Industries and subsidiary companies of Meridian Global, the financial behemoth whose fraud she had exposed 3 years prior. "You knew," she accused, her voice dangerously quiet as Tariq entered the room. "You knew exactly who I was when you bid on me." Tariq closed the door behind him, his expression revealing nothing. "I did." Was this some kind of elaborate revenge? Humiliate the woman who nearly brought down your associates? A muscle tightened in his jaw. "If I wanted revenge, Ms. Vega, there are far more efficient methods." "Then why?" Elena demanded, gesturing to the papers. "These subsidiaries, they're linked to the same fraud ring I exposed." Tariq moved to the window overlooking the expansive desert landscape surrounding his estate. For a moment, he stood in silence, his profile silhouetted against the setting sun. 3 years ago, I acquired several companies as part of a larger investment portfolio, he finally said. I was unaware of their connections to Meridian until your exposé broke. By then, the damage to my reputation was already done. Certain circles began to question my judgment, my integrity. He turned to face her. What you're looking at represents a minor portion of my holdings, but the association has cost me partnerships, contracts, trust. That hardly explains why you paid $5 million for my company, Eleanor countered, crossing her arms. Because my empire is being systematically dismantled, Tariq replied, his calm facade cracking slightly to reveal genuine concern. Someone is targeting my businesses, and I need to know who and why. He approached the desk and pulled out another folder from a hidden drawer, sliding it toward her. Inside were financial reports showing a pattern of destabilization across Hakim Industries' global ventures. In the past 8 months, 3 major projects have collapsed due to seemingly unrelated issues. Construction accidents, regulatory problems, partnership dissolutions. My security team has found evidence of sabotage, but nothing concrete enough to take action. Elena's analytical mind was already processing the patterns in the data. You think someone is deliberately targeting you? I know they are, Tariq replied, and they're using sophisticated financial maneuvers to do it, the kind that someone with your particular expertise might recognize. Understanding dawned on Elena. You didn't buy a companion, you bought a financial investigator. I bought time with the woman who had the courage and intelligence to expose a $4 billion fraud when everyone else looked the other way, Tariq corrected. I need those skills now. Elena looked from the documents to Tariq, her mind racing. You could have simply hired me as a consultant. Would you have accepted? He asked pointedly. After what happened the last time you confronted powerful interests. She fell silent, knowing the answer. Besides, Tariq continued, whoever is behind this has extensive resources and connections. If they realized I was investigating, they might accelerate their plans. This arrangement provides the perfect cover. So instead of being your companion, you want me to be your secret financial investigator? Elena clarified. I want both, Tariq replied frankly. For you will appear to the world as exactly what they expect, my latest acquisition. You will accompany me to social functions, be seen at my side. But behind closed doors, you will have access to all my financial records, full resources to investigate. He circled the desk, standing directly before her. In return, your son receives the best medical care in the world. Your $5 million remains yours, regardless of what you find. And if you help me identify who is destroying my businesses, there will be a substantial bonus. Elena's mind was already calculating possibilities, professional instincts reawakening after years of forced dormancy. And if I refuse this modified arrangement, then the original agreement stands. You spend a year as my companion, nothing more. Your son still receives treatment, you still get paid. He leaned slightly closer. But you miss the opportunity to use your talents again, to potentially uncover another major financial conspiracy. He knew exactly which buttons to push. The analyst in her, the woman who had once lived for the thrill of following money trails and exposing corruption, stirred restlessly. There's something you're not telling me, Elena observed, noting the tension in his shoulders. Something about why you're being targeted. A flicker of surprise crossed his features, quickly masked. Perceptive, he acknowledged. I have enemies, Miss Vega. When you reach my position, it's inevitable. One enemy in particular. Tariq nodded slowly. Hassan Malouf. We were once partners years ago. The dissolution of our partnership was acrimonious. He has the resources and the motive. And you think he's behind the sabotage? I think he's a suspect, but I need proof, not suspicions. Elena considered the proposition. Working as a financial investigator again, with unlimited resources and the challenge of uncovering a conspiracy, it called to the part of her that had withered in the years since her professional execution. I have conditions, she stated firmly. Complete access to your financial records, all of them, not just what you deem relevant. Freedom to pursue any leads I discover, and Miguel stays with me here once he's stable enough to leave the medical center. Agreed, Tariq replied without hesitation, though for appearances we'll need a suitable cover story for his presence. He's my son. That's explanation enough. In Western contexts, perhaps. In my circles, it would raise questions. That could compromise our ruse. He thought for a moment. He will be introduced as my ward, a child of a distant relative whom I've taken responsibility for. It will explain his presence and the medical care. Elena wanted to object, but recognized the pragmatism in his suggestion. Fine, but I have complete say over his care and education. Of course. One more thing, Elena added. I want it in writing that when this is over, when I find who's targeting you, my obligation ends. I won't be held to the full year if my investigation concludes sooner. Tariq studied her face. You're assuming you'll succeed. I always do, she replied, a spark of her former confidence returning. That's why you bought me, isn't it? For the first time, genuine amusement flickered across his face. Indeed it is, Miss Vega. He extended his hand. "Do we have an agreement?" Elena hesitated only briefly before clasping his hand. His grip was firm, his palm surprisingly calloused for a man of his wealth. "We do, Mr. Hakim, but understand this. I'm not your possession. I'm your partner in this investigation." "Understood." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps. "Though in public I'll play my part," Elena conceded, "but behind closed doors, we work as equals." As they shook hands, neither could have predicted how their agreement would evolve, or the dangers that awaited them both. The web of deception surrounding Tariq's empire ran deeper than either imagined, with threads connecting to Elena's past, in ways that would soon threaten everything they held dear. Outside the office window, the desert sun slipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, much like the shadows of secrets that still lay between them, waiting to be uncovered. The grand ballroom of the Emirates Palace gleamed with opulence, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light over the gathering of the world's elite. It was Elena's first public appearance with Tariq, and she felt the weight of countless eyes following their every move. Her emerald gown, selected by Tariq's personal stylist, whispered against the marble floor as they moved through the crowd. "Remember," Tariq murmured near her ear, his hand resting possessively at the small of her back, "everyone here is assessing our relationship, looking for weakness." "I'm aware," Elena replied through a practiced smile. "This isn't my first masquerade." Indeed, during her Wall Street days, she had navigated similar waters, though never as an object of speculation rather than professional respect. The role reversal stung more than she'd anticipated. "Tariq!" A silver-haired man approached, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "I was beginning to think you'd abandoned society altogether." "Ramsey," Tariq acknowledged coolly. "Business has kept me occupied." "So I've heard." Ramsey's gaze shifted to Elena, assessing her with undisguised interest. "And this must be your new acquisition." Elena felt Tariq tense beside her. "Ms. Elena Vega," he introduced smoothly. "An invaluable addition to my household." Elena extended her hand with practiced grace. "Mr. Ramsey, Tariq speaks so rarely of his associates. I'm delighted to finally meet one." The subtle barb landed perfectly. Ramsey's smile faltered as he took her hand, clearly recalibrating his assessment. "Ms. Vega has a particular talent for seeing what others miss," Tariq added, and Elena caught the double meaning in his words. "Indeed," Ramsey raised an eyebrow. "And what brought you into Tariq's employment?" Before Elena could respond, a newcomer joined their circle, a man whose very presence seemed to drop the temperature of the room by several degrees. "Quite the gathering of interests," said the man, his voice carrying a hint of an accent similar to Tariq's. "Hakim Industries, Preston Financial, and a new face." Tariq's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Hassan, I wasn't aware you were in Abu Dhabi." "Business opportunities arise unexpectedly," Hassan Malouf replied, his gaze never leaving Elena. "Won't you introduce us, old friend?" The word friend dripped with sarcasm. "Elena Vega, Hassan Malouf," Tariq said tersely. "An old acquaintance." "More than an acquaintance, surely," Hassan corrected, taking Elena's hand and bringing it to his lips. "Your predecessor and competitor. Though I must say, Tariq's taste has improved remarkably." The tension between the two men was palpable. Even Ramsey shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Vega," Hassan continued, still holding her hand a moment too long, "I wonder if you know what you've gotten yourself into, aligning yourself with Hakim." Elena extracted her hand coolly. "I find that making my own assessment serves me better than relying on competitors' opinions." Hassan's smile tightened. "Wise. Though I wonder if Tariq has shared certain aspects of his past with you. The accident, perhaps." Elena felt Tariq go rigid beside her. "Some matters remain private, Hassan," Tariq said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Even in our circle." "Privacy, yes," Hassan nodded, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Though I've always found that secrets have a way of revealing themselves at the most inopportune moments. The veiled threat hung in the air between them. Elena instinctively moved closer to Tariq, her hand slipping through his arm in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. "If you'll excuse us," she said, maintaining her composure, "I believe the ambassador was hoping to speak with us." As they moved away, Elena felt Hassan's eyes following them across the room. "That's him, isn't it?" she whispered. "Your prime suspect?" "Yes," Tariq replied, guiding her through the crowd, "and he just confirmed my suspicions." "What did he mean about an accident?" Tariq's expression closed. "Nothing relevant to our agreement." Elena was about to press further when they were intercepted by another couple. A distinguished older man with a diplomatic bearing and a much younger woman draped in diamonds. "Tariq Hakim, the man himself," the older gentleman boomed. "We were beginning to think you'd become a recluse." "Ambassador Chen," Tariq greeted him, tension dissipating from his shoulders. "A pleasure as always. May I introduce Elena Vega?" The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and carefully choreographed conversations. Elena observed the intricate power dynamics at play, who approached whom, who deferred, who challenged. Throughout it all, she noted how different factions seemed to align themselves either with Tariq or from a distance with Hassan. More concerning were the whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when they approached, the speculative glances cast in their direction. "They're discussing your company's troubles," Elena murmured during a momentary respite near the champagne fountain. "The Rotterdam project in particular." Tariq glanced at her with surprise. "How did you—" "Lip reading," she explained. "A useful skill in corporate boardrooms. That group by the eastern windows, they're major investors in your Rotterdam port development, aren't they?" "Yes," Tariq confirmed, impressed. "The project that mysteriously lost regulatory approval last month after years of green lights. And that man speaking with Hassan now, he's on the Dutch Regulatory Commission." Tariq's eyes narrowed as he observed the interaction. "Indeed, how very coincidental." Their observations were interrupted by the arrival of Ziad, who whispered something urgently in Tariq's ear. Elena noticed how the security chief's gaze kept returning to Hassan across the room. "We need to leave," Tariq informed. His expression grim. "Now." "What's happened?" Elena asked as they moved discreetly toward the exit. "Security breach at my office in the city," he replied tersely. "Files accessed." In the limousine, Tariq finally elaborated. "Someone broke into my private office and accessed files related to my most vulnerable investments. Someone working for Hassan? Possibly, but they knew exactly what to look for and how to find it. That suggests inside knowledge." Elena processed this information. "You think you have a traitor in your organization?" "I'm certain of it," Tariq replied, his voice hard. "And tonight's encounter with Hassan confirms he's accelerating his plans." "What did he mean about an accident?" Elena pressed again. "He implied it was something significant." Tariq was silent for so long that Elena thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was subdued. 10 years ago, I was involved in a car accident in the mountains. My injuries were severe. The doctors managed to save my life, but certain functions could not be restored." He met her gaze directly. "I cannot father children, Elena. My bloodline ends with me." The revelation hung between them in the darkness of the car. "In my culture, in my position, this is more than a personal tragedy. It's a vulnerability. Hassan knows this. And he's using it against you," Elena concluded softly. "It's why I've never married. What dynasty can a man build without heirs?" The bitterness in his voice was palpable. "Hassan, meanwhile, has 3 sons. He never lets me forget it." Elena absorbed this information, understanding now the deeper currents beneath their rivalry. "So it's not just business for him. It's personal." "Everything between us is personal," Tariq confirmed. "We were like brothers once. Now he won't rest until he's destroyed everything I've built." As the limousine sped through the night, Elena's mind raced with connections and possibilities. The evening had revealed far more than she'd anticipated, not just about Tariq's enemies, but about the man himself. Beneath the powerful exterior lay vulnerabilities and pain she hadn't expected. "We'll find your traitor," she promised, "and we'll stop Hassan." Tariq studied her face in the passing streetlights. "You sound certain." "I am," Elena replied. "He made a mistake tonight." "Which was?" "He underestimated me," she said simply. "They all did. They saw what they expected to see. Your latest acquisition, a decorative companion. Not the woman who brought down Meridian Global." For the first time that evening, Tariq's smile reached his eyes. "Their mistake," he agreed. "One I don't intend to correct." As the city lights blurred past the windows, their unlikely alliance solidified, forged in the crucible of shared enemies and mutual need. What neither yet realized was how quickly their carefully negotiated agreement would be tested, or how the lines between professional partnership and personal connection would begin to blur as they faced the growing storm together. A month into their arrangement, Elena stood in Tariq's underground data center, surrounded by financial records projected onto transparent screens. The room, secured beneath the estate and accessible only by biometric scanning, had become her command center, a place where she could follow the complex money trails that circled Hakim Industries like predators. "I've found something," she announced as Tariq entered. The weeks of working together had established a rhythm between them, professional, focused, but with an undercurrent of growing respect. "Show me," he responded, moving to stand beside her. Elena gestured to a complex web of transactions. "These shell companies, they're being used to quietly purchase controlling interests in firms that supply critical components for your Johannesburg development." Tariq studied the diagram, after which the suppliers suddenly couldn't fulfill their contracts. "Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting." Elena flicked her hand, changing the display. "The funds originate from accounts in Liechtenstein, routed through Singapore, then the Caymans. Classic obfuscation. Can you trace them back to Hassan?" "Not directly," Elena admitted, "but I've identified a pattern in the timing of the transactions. They always occur within 48 hours of your board meetings." Tariq's expression darkened. "Someone with access to our strategic planning." "Someone high level," Elena confirmed. "I've narrowed it down to 5 possibilities. Executives with both access to your planning sessions and the technical knowledge to execute these financial maneuvers." Before Tariq could respond, the doors slid open. Fatima, the maternal Egyptian woman who had become Miguel's caretaker, appeared with urgency in her eyes. "Pardon the interruption, but Miguel wishes to speak with you both. He says it's important." Elena and Tariq exchanged glances, concern evident in both their faces. Since Miguel's discharge from the medical center 2 weeks earlier, he had thrived under Fatima's care and the specialized treatment protocol. Though initially cautious around Tariq, the boy had gradually warmed to him, especially when Tariq had introduced him to the estate's advanced technology systems. They found Miguel in the estate's library, surrounded by tablets and paper notebooks. At 8 years old, with Elena's dark hair and quick eyes, he possessed an analytical mind that sometimes startled even his mother. "I found a pattern," he announced without preamble, his excitement palpable. "In the numbers." "What numbers?" "Sweetheart?" Elena asked, kneeling beside him. "The ones from Mr. Tariq's computer." He pointed to a tablet displaying what appeared to be a spreadsheet. "Miss Fatima let me use the tablet, and I found these in the shared folder." Tariq raised an eyebrow at Fatima, who looked mortified. "He asked for games," she explained. "I did not realize the folder contained work files as well." Rather than being angry, Tariq seemed intrigued. He crouched beside Miguel. "What pattern did you find?" Miguel pointed to his notebook where he had scrawled sequences of numbers. "These numbers come up over and over, but not in a counting way, in a music way." Elena and Tariq exchanged confused glances. "A music way?" Elena prompted. "Like patterns in beats," Miguel explained with the exasperation of a child dealing with slower adults. "Some loud, some soft, some fast, some slow." He tapped out a rhythm on the table. "These transactions have a rhythm." Tariq looked skeptical, but Elena felt a prickle of recognition. "Show me," she urged her son. Miguel flipped through his notes, pointing out transaction amounts across different accounts. See, they go big, small, small, big, small, big, big. Then, they start over. But the person changes the actual numbers so you don't notice. Elena studied the figures, her mind racing. He's right, she breathed. It's a signature pattern, not in the amounts themselves, but in the relative sizes of sequential transactions. Tariq looked from Miguel to Elena. Are you saying we can identify the person behind these transactions by this rhythm? Not just that, Elena said, excitement building. Miguel's found the key to unraveling the whole scheme. Because if this pattern is consistent, we can predict their next moves, Tariq finished, understanding dawning. Exactly. Elena turned to her son. Miguel, this is brilliant. How did you see this? The boy shrugged. It's like the music. Patterns, Dr. Levine taught me to remember my medications. Patterns help your brain work better. The moment of discovery was interrupted by a commotion from the main hall. Ziad appeared at the library door, his expression grave. Sir, there's been a breach. Security systems were compromised approximately 20 minutes ago. Tariq was instantly alert. Location? The east perimeter. We've secured the area, but... Ziad hesitated, glancing at Miguel and Fatima. Speak freely, Tariq instructed. 3 intruders were intercepted. 1 was captured. He carried credentials identifying him as an employee of Maloof International. The implications hung heavily in the air. Elena instinctively moved closer to Miguel, her protective instincts flaring. What did they access? Tariq demanded. We're still assessing, but it appears they were heading toward the residential wing, not the offices. Elena felt her blood run cold. The residential wing, where Miguel's room was located. Sir, Ziad continued, his voice dropping. The captured intruder had this. He held out a tablet displaying a photograph of Miguel with Arabic text beneath. Tariq's expression hardened as he read it. Get everyone to the secure room, he ordered, immediately. As Ziad moved to escort them, Elena grabbed Tariq's arm. What did it say? She demanded. Tariq's eyes met hers, grim determination replacing his usual reserve. It was instructions to take the boy. The world seemed to tilt beneath Elena's feet. Why would Hassan target Miguel? Perhaps he discovered our investigation, Tariq suggested, but doubt clouded his features. Though this feels more personal than strategic. As they hurried through the corridors toward the secure room, a fortified chamber in the heart of the estate, Elena's mind raced. The timing was too coincidental. Minutes after Miguel discovered a pattern that could expose their enemy, intruders had targeted him. The secure room was a stark contrast to the opulence of the rest of the estate, functional, reinforced, with independent systems for communication and surveillance. Once inside, Tariq moved to a control panel, activating additional security protocols while Ziad stationed guards outside. What exactly did Miguel discover? Tariq asked once the immediate crisis was contained. Elena explained her son's insight. About the transaction patterns, watching realization dawn on Tariq's face. If we can identify the signature pattern, he said slowly, we can trace it back through years of transactions. And potentially identify your traitor, Elena confirmed. Tariq turned to Miguel, who was watching the security monitors with fascination. You may have discovered something very important, Miguel. Something that certain people would not want found. The boy nodded solemnly. That's why the bad men came. I believe so, Tariq agreed. Which means we need to move you both to safety until we can resolve this. Where? Elena asked. Tariq's expression was unreadable. I have a property in the deep desert. Few know of its existence. We'll depart tonight. Sir, Ziad interrupted, entering with a tablet. The intruder has been persuaded to share information. He confirms they were sent by Hassan Maloof with orders to capture the boy. And their purpose? Tariq demanded. Ziad glanced uncomfortably at Elena and Miguel. Leverage, sir? Against both of you. Elena felt sick. Her decision to expose the Meridian fraud had once again put her child in danger, but this time she wasn't facing it alone. There's more, sir, Ziad continued reluctantly. The intruder mentioned a name, Operation Waris. Tariq went completely still. You're certain? Yes, sir. He was quite specific. Tariq turned away, his shoulders rigid with tension. Elena approached him cautiously. What does it mean? She asked quietly. Waris means heir in Arabic, Tariq replied, his voice strained. It was the code name for a project Hassan and I worked on years ago, before our partnership dissolved. What kind of project? Tariq's expression was conflicted. A personal matter, one I thought buried in the past. Before Elena could press further, the emergency lighting activated, bathing the room in red. Second breach, Ziad reported tersely, checking the security. Monitors. East Wing is compromised. We need to move now. As they prepared to evacuate through a hidden passage, Elena caught Tariq's arm. No more secrets, she insisted. Whatever Operation Waris was, it's clearly relevant now. I need to know what we're facing. Tariq held her gaze, something like regret in his eyes. When we're safe, he promised. But understand this, Hassan's interest in Miguel may not be merely tactical. The connection may be more fundamental. What are you saying? That the past never stays buried, Tariq replied cryptically, and that patterns repeat in unexpected ways. As they moved through the hidden corridor, Tariq leading, Ziad bringing up the rear, with Elena, Miguel, and Fatima between them, Elena's mind whirled with implications. The financial investigation had exposed far more than corporate sabotage. Now it had exposed them all to physical danger and hinted at connections between Tariq, Hassan, and possibly even Miguel that she couldn't yet comprehend. Whatever Operation Waris was, it had triggered a visceral reaction in Tariq, and somehow Hassan was now entangled in a decades-old conflict between two powerful men. As they emerged into the desert night where a helicopter waited to take them to safety, Elena made a silent vow. She would uncover the full truth, no matter how painful. For Miguel's sake, and for her own, there could be no more partial revelations or convenient omissions. The time for half-truths was over. The desert safe house defied Elena's expectations, rather than the opulent mansion she had come to associate. With Tariq, this was a low-slung structure that blended seamlessly with the landscape, its walls the same golden hue as the surrounding sand. Solar panels gleamed on the roof, capturing the abundant sunlight, while advanced water recycling systems sustained life in this harsh environment. 3 days had passed since their hasty evacuation from the main estate. 3 days of heightened security, muted conversations, and growing tension between Elena and Tariq. She found him at dawn on the 4th day, standing on a ridge overlooking the vast emptiness of the desert. The rising sun painted his profile in gold and shadow. You promised me the truth, Elena said without preamble, coming to stand beside him, about Operation Waris, about why Hassan is targeting Miguel specifically. Tariq didn't turn, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Some truths come at a heavy cost. I can't afford that cost anymore, Elena replied firmly. Not when my son's safety is at stake. Tariq finally turned to face her, his expression somber. Operation Waris wasn't a corporate project. It was a medical one. He paused, choosing his words carefully. After my accident, when I learned I could never father children, Hassan and I explored alternative methods. We invested in cutting-edge fertility research. What kind of research? Elena asked, sensing there was much more to the story. Genetic engineering, advanced reproductive technology. Tariq's eyes held hers steadily. We collected my genetic material before it was too late, hoping science might eventually provide a solution. Understanding began to dawn on Elena. The project was to create an heir for you. Yes, Tariq turned back to the desert vista, but our partnership dissolved before it reached fruition. Hassan took control of the research and the biological materials. I believed he had destroyed everything in his quest to eliminate any chance of my legacy continuing. Elena's mind raced ahead to the implications. You think Miguel is somehow connected to this research? I think it's a possibility we must consider, Tariq replied carefully. The timing of Hassan's interest in him, coinciding with his discovery of the financial pattern, It's too perfect. That's absurd, Elena protested, but without conviction. Miguel is my son. I carried him, gave birth to him. I'm not suggesting otherwise, Tariq assured her. But there are methods, genetic manipulation, embryo donation, that wouldn't negate your biological connection while still incorporating external genetic material. Elena felt dizzy with the possibilities. You're suggesting that Hassan might have used your genetic material to, what? Create Miguel? That's science fiction. 10 years ago, perhaps, but the research we funded was decades ahead of its time. Tariq's voice was gentle. Elena, what do you know about Miguel's father? The question struck a nerve. A brief relationship. He wasn't interested in being a father. She'd always kept the details vague, even to herself. The man had vanished before she'd known she was pregnant, leaving behind only a first name and memories of a passionate week in Dubai during a financial conference. And there were no unusual circumstances around Miguel's conception, no fertility treatments. Elena started to deny it automatically, then stopped. There had been something unusual. After her brief affair, she'd experienced a severe infection, requiring hospitalization. The doctors had been concerned about potential fertility impacts. Months later, her pregnancy had seemed almost miraculous. I was told I might have difficulty conceiving after an infection, she admitted slowly. When I became pregnant with Miguel, my doctor called it unexpected, but fortunate. Tariq nodded as if her words confirmed a theory. Hassan would have had access to the finest medical facilities, the most discreet professionals. If he wanted to continue the project without my knowledge. This is insane, Elena whispered, but the pieces were aligning in her analytical mind. Hassan's obsession with Miguel, the reference to Operation Waris, even Miguel's extraordinary pattern recognition abilities, a trait she'd always attributed to his natural intelligence, but which mirrored Tariq's own analytical gifts. We can confirm it with genetic testing, Tariq suggested carefully, but only if you wish to know the truth. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the desert heat. And if it's true? If Hassan used your genetic material to create Miguel? What then? Then he is, in some sense, both your son and my heir, Tariq answered simply. And Hassan's interest in him becomes even more dangerous. He would see Miguel as both a weapon against me and the key to controlling my legacy. The implications were overwhelming. Elena turned away, needing space to process this possibility that rewrote everything she thought she knew about her son. Why would Hassan do this? She asked finally. Why create a child with your genetics only to place him with me, someone who later became your adversary? That's what I've been trying to understand, Tariq admitted. The most logical explanation is that he didn't initially place Miguel with you deliberately. Perhaps you were selected as a surrogate, without knowing who the genetic material came from. The connection to me would have been kept secret, known only to Hassan and his medical team. And then years later, I exposed the Meridian fraud, which had connections to your businesses, Elena continued, following the thread. Hassan would have seen this as an opportunity. Exactly. An ironic chance to place my potential heir with the woman who had caused me significant damage. Tariq's expression darkened. Hassan appreciates such ironies. A thought struck Elena. But how would Hassan even know about me? About my connection to Miguel? If you received medical treatment after your exposure of Meridian, Hassan has connections throughout the global healthcare industry. He could have discovered your identity then, realized the connection to the child he'd helped create years earlier. The pieces were aligning with terrible clarity. Elena recalled the mysterious medical bills that had been anonymously paid after Miguel's first autoimmune flare-up 3 years ago, right after the Meridian scandal. At the time, she'd attributed it to an anonymous benefactor, perhaps someone who'd respected her whistleblowing. He's been watching us, she whispered, all this time. And when I acquired you at the auction, it must have seemed like his. Long game was playing out perfectly, Tariq concluded, until Miguel discovered the financial pattern that could expose his operations. The weight of these revelations pressed down on Elena. If true, her son was the unwitting center of a decades-long power struggle between two titans. His very existence was the product of manipulation and revenge. "I need to see him," she said suddenly, turning back toward the safe house. Tariq caught her arm gently. "Elena, none of this changes who Miguel is, who you are to him." His touch was unexpectedly comforting. She looked down at his hand on her arm, then up to his face. The morning light revealed facets she hadn't noticed before, lines of care around his eyes, a vulnerability beneath the powerful exterior. "If this is true," she said softly, "then you are a part of him too." Something shifted in Tariq's expression, hope mingled with fear. "I never thought I would have a legacy, a continuation of myself in this world." The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged with implications neither was ready to fully address. "We should run the tests," Elena decided finally. "We need to know what we're dealing with," Tariq nodded. "I'll have Dr. Levine perform them discreetly." They walked back to the safe house in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. As they approached, they heard Miguel's laughter ringing out from the courtyard where he was playing a game with Fatima. The sound stopped Elena in her tracks. Whatever revelations awaited them, whatever conspiracies and machinations had led, to this moment Miguel was still just a boy, her boy, innocent and deserving of protection. "Whatever the truth is," she said quietly to Tariq, "we face it together, for his sake." Tariq's expression softened as he watched Miguel. "Together," he agreed. That afternoon, as Dr. Levine collected samples for the genetic testing, Elena observed a subtle change in how Tariq interacted with Miguel. There was a tentative tenderness in his manner, a careful attention to the boy's words and expressions that hadn't been there before. Later, as Miguel napped, exhausted from the tests and the desert heat, Elena found Tariq in the safe house's small study, reviewing security protocols with Ziad. "Hassan will not stop searching," Ziad was saying as she entered. "My sources indicate he has deployed teams to all known Hakim properties. Then we remain here until we've developed a counter-offensive," Tariq replied. He looked up as Elena entered, dismissing Ziad with a nod. "The tests will take 48 hours, he informed her once they were alone. "Dr. Levine will process them personally." Elena nodded, sinking into a chair across from him. The emotional toll of the day had left her drained. "All these years," she said quietly, "I thought I knew who we were, Miguel and I against the world. Now I discover our entire story might be a fabrication." "Not a fabrication," Tariq corrected gently. "A manipulation of circumstances, perhaps. But your love for him, his for you, those are authentic." "And what about you?" Elena asked, meeting his gaze directly. "If the tests confirm your genetic connection to Miguel, what will that mean to you?" Tariq considered the question carefully. "I never expected to have a child. The possibility both terrifies and awakens something in me I thought was dead." His honesty surprised her. In the weeks they'd worked together, Tariq had revealed himself to be brilliant, determined, even ruthless when necessary. But this vulnerability was new, a glimpse behind the carefully constructed facade. "You would have a claim to him," Elena said, voicing her deepest fear. "No," Tariq replied firmly. "I would have a responsibility to him. There's a difference." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Elena, regardless of what the tests reveal, I will never attempt to separate Miguel from you. You are his mother in every way that matters." The sincerity in his voice eased something in her chest. "And what would you be to him?" "Whatever you both wish me to be," Tariq answered simply. "Guardian, protector, financial provider, or more. If that becomes appropriate with time." The word hung between them, pregnant with possibility. Time, something they'd never considered having together beyond their initial agreement. "We should focus on keeping him safe first," Elena said, deflecting from the unexpected intimacy of the moment. "Hassan is still out there, and he knows things about Miguel that even we don't fully understand yet." Tariq nodded, allowing the shift back to practical matters. "You're right, and we still need to identify the traitor in my organization." "Actually," Elena said, "I think Miguel's discovery gives us a way to do exactly that." She outlined a plan she'd been formulating since their escape, using the transaction rhythm Miguel had identified to set a trap for whoever was feeding information to Hassan. As they strategized together, equals now in a way they hadn't been. Before, Eleanor felt a subtle shift in their dynamics. The boundaries established in their initial agreement were blurring, replaced by something more organic. Their shared concern for Miguel, their mutual goal of stopping Hassan, had transformed their arrangement into a genuine partnership. That night, after checking on Miguel one last time, Elena stepped onto the small terrace outside her room. The desert night was cool, the sky ablaze with stars. She found Tariq already there, his silhouette outlined against the vast darkness. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked without turning. "Too many thoughts," she admitted, coming to stand beside him. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, gazing at the ancient constellations. "When I was a child," Tariq said finally, "my father would bring me to the desert during the new moon. He said that only in complete darkness could you truly see the light of the stars." He gestured upward. "He taught me to navigate by them, to find my way home even when all other landmarks disappeared." Elena studied his profile, seeing in it echoes of Miguel's features that she'd never noticed before. "Is that what we're doing now? Finding our way home?" Tariq turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps, though I'm no longer certain where home is." "It's not a place," Elena said softly. "It's people. It's connection." Their eyes held, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of the unexpected bond that had formed in the crucible of crisis. Tariq reached out slowly, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face with a gentleness that belied his usual reserve. "When I bought your time at that auction, I never imagined that we'd end up here," Eleanor finished when he trailed off. "In hiding, possibly sharing a child, fighting against a common enemy." A smile touched his lips. "Life rarely follows the paths we anticipate." Elena felt herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by something beyond conscious thought. "No," she agreed softly, "it doesn't." The moment balanced on a knife's edge, possibility and uncertainty in perfect tension. Then from inside the house came the sound of Miguel calling for his mother. Reality reasserted itself as they both stepped back, the moment passing but not forgotten. "He probably had another nightmare," Elena explained, already moving toward the door. "Go," Tariq nodded. "He needs you." As she left to comfort her son, their son perhaps, Elena felt the weight of new beginnings settling around her shoulders. Whatever tests revealed, whatever challenges awaited them, the old boundaries had dissolved. Where once there had been a contract, there was now connection. Where once there had been suspicion, there was now trust. And something else, something neither of them had expected or sought, but which had taken root nonetheless in the harsh desert soil of their circumstances. Dawn would bring test results and renewed threats, but it would also bring the first light of something neither had dared hope for, a new beginning, built not on transactions or agreements, but on shared purpose and nascent understanding. 2 weeks passed in the desert safe house. 2 weeks of heightened vigilance, strategic planning, and profound adjustment to new realities. The genetic test results had confirmed what they'd suspected. Miguel shared DNA markers with both Elena and Tariq. Dr. Levine's careful analysis suggested sophisticated genetic engineering had been employed to create an embryo that was implanted during Elena's medical treatment years ago, all orchestrated by Hassan in a long-term plot, combining revenge and control. For Miguel, the revelation that Tariq was, in a biological sense, his father, had been accepted with the straightforward resilience of childhood. "That's why we both like numbers so much," he'd declared simply. Adult complications, the manipulation, the violation of consent, the years of deception, remained beyond his understanding. For him, the news merely expanded his world rather than shattering it. Elena watched from the shade of the courtyard as Tariq taught Miguel the ancient desert game of Sega, using stones on a grid drawn in the sand. The boy's dark head bent close to Tariq's as they concentrated on strategy, their profiles striking in their similarity. "They are becoming close," Fatima observed, joining Eleanor with a tray of cool drinks. The older woman had proven herself not just a caretaker, but a fierce protector, her maternal instincts extending to all of them in these uncertain times. "Yes," Elena agreed, accepting a glass of mint-infused water, faster than I expected. "Children recognize what is true beneath what is said," Fatima replied with the wisdom of her years. "The blood bond speaks." Elena watched as Miguel executed a clever move, causing Tariq to laugh in surprise and appreciation. The sound echoed against the courtyard walls, a rare, unguarded moment of joy. "I never thought I'd share him with anyone," Elena admitted softly. Fatima's dark eyes were kind but knowing. "And yet your heart has room for this change." Before Elena could respond, Ziad appeared at the courtyard entrance, his expression tense. "Ms. Vega, Mr. Hakim, we have a development." Tariq immediately rose, instructing Miguel to continue practicing the game patterns. He and Elena followed Ziad to the secure communications room, where satellite feeds and encrypted messages connected them to the outside world. "We've identified the traitor," Ziad announced once the door was sealed. He pulled up a file on the main screen. "Amir Deeb, Chief Financial Strategist. He's been with Hakim Industries for 8 years. Elena studied the image of a distinguished-looking man in his 50s. He was using the transaction rhythm Miguel identified. "Yes," Ziad confirmed. "We planted the false investment information you suggested, using the pattern as a marker." Within hours, Deeb accessed the files and transmitted data using the same rhythmic signature. "Where is he now?" Tariq asked, his voice controlled, but with an undercurrent of fury. "Still at headquarters, unaware that we've discovered his treachery. We're monitoring all his communications." "Good," Tariq nodded. "We can use him to feed Hassan false information." "There's more," Ziad continued. "We've intercepted communications suggesting Hassan is planning a major move against your remaining assets within the week, something he's calling phase finale. He's accelerating his timeline," Elena noted. "Why?" "Perhaps because we've disappeared with Miguel," Tariq suggested. "He's lost his leverage, his prize. Or he knows we're getting closer to exposing him," Elena countered. "We need to move first, use Deeb to set a trap." As they discussed strategy, Elena noticed a subtle shift in Tariq's demeanor, a new sense of purpose that went beyond business concerns. This was now about protecting a family, not just an empire. "We'll return to the main estate tomorrow," he decided finally. "It's time to confront this directly." "Is that wise?" Elena questioned. "Miguel will be exposed." "We'll take precautions," Tariq assured her, "but we can't hide forever, and to defeat Hassan, we need resources that aren't available here." Elena wanted to argue, but recognized the truth in his words. Their enemy was closing in, and this remote hideaway, while safe temporarily, limited their ability to counterattack. That evening, as they prepared for departure, Elena found Tariq in the small library reviewing security protocols. The past 2 weeks had transformed him in subtle ways, softening his edges while sharpening his resolve. "Miguel's asleep," she reported, settling into a chair across from him. "He's excited about going back. He misses the technology lab you set up for him." Tariq smiled faintly. "He has a brilliant mind. With proper guidance, he could revolutionize computational analysis. Someday." "Is that what you want for him?" Elena asked carefully. "To follow in your footsteps?" Tariq considered the question seriously. "I want him to have choices I never had. My path was predetermined from birth, heir to the Hakim legacy, guardian. Serve generations of wealth and influence." He met her gaze. "What do you want for him?" "Happiness," Elena answered simply. "Safety, the freedom to become whoever he's meant to be." "Then we want the same things," Tariq concluded. He hesitated, then added, "Elena, when this is over, when Hassan is neutralized and my company secure, we should discuss permanent arrangements." The phrase caught her off guard. "Permanent arrangements?" "For Miguel," Tariq clarified. "For his care, his future, for your place in my household." Eleanor felt a complex surge of emotions. "My place? I'm not an asset to be positioned, Tariq. "That's not what I meant," he replied, frustration evident in his tone. "I'm not proposing a business arrangement. I'm trying to suggest—" He trailed, off, uncharacteristically uncertain. "Suggest what?" Elena pressed. Tariq rose and paced to the window, his back to her as he gazed out at the starlit desert. "I've lived my life in calculated exchanges. Investments, acquisitions, strategic alliances. What has developed between us, it doesn't fit those categories." Eleanor joined him at the window, standing close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "No," she agreed softly. "It doesn't." He turned to face her, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. "I don't know how to navigate this terrain, but I know that I want you and Miguel in my life beyond our original agreement, not as obligations or acquisitions, but as family." The word hung between them, freighted with meaning. Family. The one thing Tariq had believed forever denied to him. "Is that even possible?" Elena asked. "With everything that's happened, everything we've learned, Hassan's manipulation, the way Miguel was created." "Perhaps it's possible precisely because of those things," Tariq suggested. "Hassan meant to use Miguel as a weapon against me, to control my legacy through him. What better defeat than to transform his scheme into something genuine, something chosen rather than imposed?" Elena considered his words, feeling the truth. In them, what had begun as a transaction had evolved into something neither of them could have anticipated, a connection forged in crisis, but deepening with every shared challenge. "I need time," she said finally, "to be sure that what I'm feeling isn't just a response to danger, to these extraordinary circumstances." "Of course," Tariq agreed, respecting her caution. "But know this, whatever you decide, Miguel will always have my protection and support." "And me?" Elena asked, wanting clarity. "If I decided that once this is over, Miguel and I should build our lives elsewhere?" Pain flashed across Tariq's features, but he answered honestly, "Then I would respect your choice, while hoping you might eventually reconsider." His honesty moved her. The man who had once purchased her time at an auction was now offering her something priceless, genuine choice without conditions or pressure. Acting on impulse, Elena reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Tariq went still beneath her touch, his eyes darkening with emotion. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing me, truly seeing me, not as an acquisition or an asset, but as a person worthy of choice." The tension between them built, the moment expanding with unspoken possibilities. Then, with a courage born of weeks of growing trust, Elena closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, an exploration rather than a claim. Then Tariq's arms came around her, drawing her closer. As the kiss deepened into something more urgent, more honest than any words they had exchanged, when they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Tariq rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he murmured, "know that what's growing between us is real." "I know," Elena replied, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Despite everything, their unorthodox beginning, Hassan's manipulations, the dangers still facing them, she did know that what they had built together was authentic. The following morning brought a flurry of activity as they prepared to leave the sanctuary of the desert safe house. Security protocols were reviewed, contingency plans established, protective measures for Miguel tripled. By midday, they were airborne in Tariq's private helicopter, the safe house diminishing to a speck before disappearing entirely beneath the rolling sand dunes. Miguel sat between them, his expression animated as he pointed out geographical features Tariq had taught him to recognize. Elena watched them together, still adjusting to this new reality where she was no longer the only parent in her son's life. "Look!" Miguel cried suddenly, pointing ahead. "The big lake, we're almost there." The artificial lake that fronted Tariq's estate gleamed sapphire against the tawny landscape. Beyond it rose the modernist architecture of the main house, its white walls and sweeping lines, a stark contrast to the organic forms of the desert. "Home," Tariq said with satisfaction as the helicopter began its descent. The word caught Elena's attention. Home. After weeks in hiding, the estate did feel oddly like returning to familiar territory, to a place of belonging, not because of its luxury or scale, but because it had been the setting for the beginning of their unlikely journey together. As the helicopter touched down on the landing pad, Ziad's security team surrounded them in a practiced formation, ushering them swiftly into the building. The practiced efficiency of their movements reminded Elena that despite the emotional evolutions of recent weeks, they were still in danger. Inside, the estate had been transformed into a fortress. Additional security personnel patrolled the EE, corridors, surveillance systems had been enhanced, and a command center had been established in what had once been a formal dining room. "We're ready to implement the counteroffensive," Ziad reported as they settled into the command center. "Deeb has been fed the information about the vulnerabilities in the Singapore operations, just as you instructed. If Hassan follows the pattern, he'll move against those holdings within 48 hours. And when he does, we'll be waiting," Tariq confirmed. He turned to Elena. "The financial traps are set." She nodded. "If Hassan attempts to leverage his position against those operations, it will trigger the protocols we established. His own financial positions will be compromised, and we'll have electronic evidence linking him directly to both the corporate sabotage and the attack on the estate." "What about Miguel?" Fatima asked the question foremost in everyone's minds. "He remains Hassan's primary target." "He stays in the secure wing," Tariq replied firmly. "With enhanced security and only pre-cleared personnel allowed access." He knelt to Miguel's level. "It means staying inside for a few days. Can you do that?" The boy nodded solemnly. "Like a secret mission?" "Exactly like that," Tariq agreed, his expression softening. "And I've had the technology lab upgraded while we were away. There are new pattern recognition programs I think you'll enjoy." As Fatima escorted Miguel to the secure wing, Elena felt a surge of gratitude for how Tariq had embraced his newly discovered paternal role, not with possession or control, but with thoughtful care and genuine interest in the boy's well-being. The next 36 hours passed in calculated preparation. True to their predictions, Hassan moved against the Singapore operations with surprising aggression, triggering the traps they had set. His financial positions began to collapse as evidence of his illegal activities was simultaneously released to regulatory authorities in 7 countries. "He's cornered," Ziad reported on the evening of the second day. "His assets are frozen, arrest warrants issued in multiple jurisdictions." "Then why don't I feel relief?" Elena wondered aloud, staring at the surveillance feeds showing the estate. Perimeter. Something nagged at her analyst's instincts, a pattern not quite aligned, a variable unaccounted for. Tariq studied her expression. "What is it?" "It's too easy," she replied slowly. "Hassan is ruthless, yes, but also cunning. He wouldn't walk into such an obvious trap without a contingency plan. Unless his focus has shifted from financial victory to personal vengeance," Tariq suggested. "He's lost much of what he built. Perhaps all that remains is ensuring I lose as well." The implication sent a chill through Elena. "Miguel," she whispered. "He's secure," Tariq assured her. "The wing is impenetrable, the staff vetted repeatedly." "No system is impenetrable," Elena countered, already moving toward the door. "Not when someone is determined enough." Her urgent instinct proved prophetic. As they approached the secure wing, alarm systems suddenly blared throughout the estate. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in crimson as Ziad's voice came over the communication system. "Breach in the North Quadrant. Multiple hostiles. Lock down all secure areas immediately." Tariq and Elena broke into a run, security personnel converging around them as they raced toward the secure wing. The reinforced doors stood closed but unguarded. The assigned security team nowhere in sight. "Override access," Tariq commanded, his voice tight with controlled fear. "Authorization, Hakim Prime." The doors unlocked with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a scene of disruption within. Furniture overturned, technology displays shattered, signs of a struggle but no bodies, no blood. "Miguel!" Elena called, panic rising in her throat as she rushed from room to room. "Fatima!" The suite was empty, but a tablet lay on Miguel's bed, its screen activated. A video message waited to be played, Hassan's face frozen in the preview frame. With trembling fingers, Elena pressed play. "Tariq, my old friend," Hassan's smooth voice filled the room. "Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies within contingencies, that your precious security couldn't be compromised? Your people have always been loyal to the highest bidder." His smile was triumphant. "The boy and the Egyptian woman are with me now. Such an extraordinary child, proof that our Project Waris succeeded beyond expectations. He truly is your son in every way that matters." The camera panned to show Miguel and Fatima, unharmed but clearly confined in an opulent room Elena didn't recognize. "You have destroyed my corporate empire," Hassan continued, "so I will take what matters most to you, your only chance at a legacy. Unless—" he paused dramatically. "Unless you come alone to our beginning place. You remember, surely, where two boys from rival families once swore blood brotherhood beneath unforgiving stars." The video ended, returning to a frozen frame of Hassan's triumphant expression. Tariq's face had gone ashen. "The oasis," he whispered, "where our family's territories met in the old days." "It's a trap," Ziad stated the obvious, having joined them during the video. "Of course it is," Tariq agreed, "but he has Miguel." He turned to Elena, anguish evident in his eyes. "I must go." "Not alone," she insisted. "He'll kill you. And if I don't go, or if I bring forces with me, he'll kill Miguel." Tariq's voice was steady, despite the emotion behind it. "He wants to end this where it began, just the two of us." "Then I'm coming with you," Elena declared, her tone brooking no argument. "Miguel is my son too." Tariq started to protest, then saw the determination in her eyes and nodded. "We'll need a plan. Hassan will expect me to come alone, but he'll have his own security forces hidden nearby." As they strategized through the night, a new understanding developed between them. This was no longer about corporate rivalry or financial victory. It was about family, the one they had unexpectedly formed amid chaos and manipulation. Whatever their origins, whatever forces had conspired to bring them together, they had created something authentic from deception's raw materials. A true home, not defined by walls or wealth, but by the bonds between them. As dawn approached, and their plan was finalized, Tariq took Elena's hands in his. "Whatever happens at the oasis," he said quietly, "know that these weeks with you and Miguel have given me something I never thought possible, a sense of belonging, of purpose beyond ambition and legacy." Elena squeezed his hands, her eyes bright, with unshed tears and fierce resolve. "We're going to bring our son home," she promised, "and then we'll build something new together, something neither Hassan nor anyone else can destroy." In that moment, surrounded by danger and uncertainty, they found an unexpected truth. Home wasn't the desert safe house or the luxurious estate. Home was the space they had created between them, a sanctuary built of trust, respect, and growing love that transcended the circumstances of their meeting. It was this certainty that steadied them as they prepared to face Hassan, to confront the architect of their manipulation and reclaim not just Miguel, but their right to define their own shared future. The ancient oasis emerged from the desert, haze like a mirage, a lush green island in an ocean of sand. Date palms swayed in the hot wind, their fronds casting dappled shadows across the clear pool at the center. Time seemed suspended here, the modern world held at bay by the timeless landscape. Tariq brought the dune buggy to a stop at the oasis perimeter, his expression grim as he surveyed the seemingly empty sanctuary. "This place hasn't changed," he observed quietly. "Hassan and I spent summers here as boys, back when our families still maintained the old ways." Elena scanned the area with tactical precision, noting potential hiding places, escape routes, advantages and disadvantages of the terrain. Her years analyzing financial data had honed her ability to see patterns others missed, a skill now deployed for far more personal stakes. "He's already here," she murmured, indicating subtle disturbances in the sand, fresh moisture where someone had recently taken water from the pool. Tariq nodded. Hassan always did pride himself on punctuality. He checked the satellite phone. One last time. Their connection to Ziad and the backup team positioned 5 kilometers away, waiting for the signal. Remember the plan. Whatever happens, Miguel's safety comes first. Always, Elena agreed. She placed her hand on his arm. Be careful. The touch lingered between them, conveying what words couldn't fully express: fear, determination, and the bond that had grown between them against all odds. As they approached the central pool, a figure emerged from the shade of the largest palm, Hassan Malouf, dressed incongruously in a tailored suit despite the desert heat. He looked smaller somehow than when Elena had last seen him at the gala, his customary arrogance tempered by the desperation of a man who had lost much in recent days. "Tariq," he called, his voice carrying across the water. "Right on time. And you brought Eleanor. How touching. The little family united." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Though not quite complete, is it? Where is my son?" Tariq demanded, stopping at the pool's edge. "Your son?" Hassan laughed sharply. "How quickly you claim him. You, who once said you had no need for children. For messy human connections, what was your phrase? Emotional liabilities on the balance sheet of life." "People change," Tariq replied simply. "Even us." "Do they?" Hassan circled the pool slowly, keeping distance between them. "Or do they simply reveal their true nature when pressed? You always wanted what I had, Tariq. My family connections, my natural charm, my ability to father sons." His expression hardened. "Even after your accident, you couldn't accept that some losses are permanent, that some advantages can't be purchased or engineered." "This isn't about the past," Elena interrupted. "Where is Miguel? Where is Fatima?" Hassan turned his attention. To her, his expression calculating. "The boy is safe for now. As for the Egyptian woman, she proved more resourceful than anticipated. Unfortunately for her, loyalty has consequences." Cold fear gripped Eleanor's heart. "What have you done to her?" "Nothing permanent," Hassan assured her with disturbing casualness. "She'll recover eventually. My concern is with the boy, my greatest creation in a sense." "He's a child, not a creation," Tariq growled, anger breaking through his controlled exterior. "Oh, but he is," Hassan corrected. "The perfect synthesis of your genetic brilliance and Elena's resilience. Project Werris's crowning achievement." He spread his hands in a gesture of mock humility. "I merely guided fate. I provided the means, arranged their convergence, a masterpiece of long-term strategy." "Where is he?" Elena demanded again, taking a step forward. Hassan held up a cautioning hand. "Patience. He's nearby, watching us even now. I wanted him to see this, to understand the legacy he carries." He gestured toward a ridge overlooking the oasis. "My men have instructions. One wrong move, and the boy becomes truly an orphan." Tariq's posture shifted subtly, a nearly imperceptible tensing that Elena recognized from their weeks together. He was preparing to act. "What do you want, Hassan?" Tariq asked, his voice deliberately calm. "My remaining assets? Corporate control? You've already lost much of your empire to the authorities." "What I want," Hassan replied, his composure slipping for the first time, "is what you've always had. Recognition, respect, the acknowledgement that I was always the superior strategist." His eyes narrowed. "Even your great financial disaster, the one Elena exposed, was my creation. I orchestrated those fraudulent investments, knowing you would acquire those companies without proper examination. Your famous discernment, compromised by your trust in my prior recommendations." Understanding dawned on Elena. "You set him up to fall years ago." "Insurance," Hassan confirmed with a tight smile. "Should our friendship ever sour, as it did when you decided our partnership no longer served your ambitions." He directed this accusation at Tariq. "You discarded me like an underperforming asset." "That's not what happened," Tariq countered. "You became reckless, endangering everything we'd built with increasingly unethical ventures." "I became visionary," Hassan snapped, control fracturing further. "While you remained cautious, calculating, cold, always the perfect Hakim heir, never risking true innovation." The wind picked up, sending ripples across the oasis pool and stirring the sand at their feet. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, a desert storm approaching. "And Miguel?" Elena pressed, keeping Hassan talking while scanning the ridge for any sign of movement. "Where does he fit in your vision?" "The boy is my triumph," Hassan declared. "When Tariq's accident made natural heirs impossible, I continued our research. Secretly. Your genetic materials were too valuable to waste," he told Tariq. "And when the opportunity presented itself with Elena, a woman of exceptional intelligence, already positioned against you by the Meridian scandal, it was too perfect." "You used me," Elena stated, anger rising in her chest. "Used my body without consent." "For a greater purpose," Hassan insisted. "The boy's existence proves my vision was correct. He has both your abilities, Tariq's analytical genius, your resilience and courage, the ultimate heir." "To what?" Tariq challenged, inching closer around the pool. "A legacy of manipulation and betrayal. That's not what Miguel will inherit from us." Hassan laughed bitterly. "And what will he inherit? Your cold empire? Your isolated existence?" He shook his head. "I've watched you both these past weeks, playing at family, at connection, but it's built on sand, a temporary alliance of convenience that will dissolve once the crisis passes." "You're wrong," Elena stated with quiet certainty. "What's between us is genuine." "Nothing in our world is genuine," Hassan countered. "Everything is calculation, strategy, positioning. That's the truth of the life Miguel is destined for, the life you've both always lived." A gust of stronger wind swept across the oasis, palm fronds whipping overhead. The storm was approaching faster than expected, the sky darkening to an ominous yellow-gray. "Enough talking," Tariq said firmly. "Show us Miguel. Prove he's unharmed." Hassan considered for a moment, then lifted a radio from his pocket. "Bring the boy," he commanded. Minutes passed in tense silence as the wind continued to intensify. Then from behind a cluster of rocks at the oasis edge emerged two of Hassan's men, escorting Miguel between them. The boy appeared physically unharmed but frightened, his eyes widening when he spotted Elena and Tariq. "Mom! Dad!" he called, out, using the term for Tariq spontaneously for the first time. Elena's heart clenched at both the fear in his voice and the natural way he had claimed Tariq as father. Beside her, she felt Tariq's sharp intake of breath at the word. "Let him come to us," Elena demanded. "Not yet," Hassan countered. "First, we conclude our business, sir." He turned to Tariq. "Transfer control of your remaining holdings to me. Now. The documents are prepared." He extended a tablet. "Your digital signature, and the boy goes with Elena." "And me?" Tariq asked, though he already knew the answer. "You and I have unfinished business," Hassan replied coldly. "Old debts to settle." Elena exchanged a quick glance with Tariq, a silent communication born of weeks working side by side. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. "I need proof. The transfer will guarantee their safety," Tariq stalled, stepping closer to take the tablet. "My word," Hassan stated. "Once worth something to you, if you recall." "Your word," Tariq repeated thoughtfully, examining the tablet. "Like your word. When we were children. When we swore to protect each other, no matter what conflicts arose between our families." "We were children," Hassan dismissed, "before we understood how the world truly works." "Perhaps it's children who understand best," Tariq countered. He looked up at Miguel, standing brave despite his fear. "They see what's real, what matters." The storm was almost upon them now, the first grains of sand stinging their faces as the wind escalated to a howl. Visibility was rapidly decreasing, exactly as they had planned when selecting this day for the meeting, having studied weather patterns in the region. "Sign it," Hassan insisted, growing agitated as the storm intensified. "Now, or I give my men different orders regarding the boy." Tariq appeared to comply, bending over the tablet, but instead of signing, he pressed a hidden sequence that activated the satellite transmitter concealed in his watch, the signal to Zayed's team. "There's another option, Hassan," Tariq said, raising his voice over the mounting storm. "One where Miguel grows up knowing both his heritage and how to be better than either of us. In the growing chaos of the storm, sounds of struggle erupted from the ridge where Hassan's snipers had been positioned. Ziad's team had moved in silently, neutralizing the hidden threat. Hassan realized the shift in power too late. He reached inside his jacket, but Elena was faster, having maneuvered herself closer to Miguel during the exchange. She launched herself toward her son, shielding him with her body as Hassan withdrew a pistol. "You always were predictable, Tariq," Hassan shouted over the storm's roar, aiming at them through the swirling sand. "Always believing you could control everything." "That was my mistake," Tariq acknowledged, stepping directly into Hassan's line of fire, placing himself between the gun and Elena and Miguel. True control isn't about domination or manipulation. It's about knowing when to let go. The storm reached its peak intensity, sand whipping around them in blinding sheets. In the chaos, a shot rang out, but not from Hassan's gun. Fatima appeared. From behind the rocks, a small pistol steady in her hands despite her injured state. Hassan crumpled to his knees, the bullet having struck his shoulder. "For the boy," Fatima said simply, her loyalties clear, as she moved protectively toward Miguel and Elena. Guards shouted in the distance as Ziad's team closed in, securing the perimeter through the blinding storm. Hassan knelt in the sand, his weapon fallen from his grasp, his face a mask of disbelief. "How?" he gasped, looking at Fatima. "You were secured, guarded." "You underestimated a mother's determination," she replied with quiet dignity. "I have raised many children in my years of service. This one," she nodded toward Miguel, "is special to us all." As Hassan's remaining men were rounded up by Ziad's security team, the storm began to abate as suddenly as it had intensified. A brief desert tempest, leaving behind transformed landscape. Sand had shifted, erasing old patterns and creating new ones, much like the lives of those gathered at the oasis. "It's over," Tariq said, turning away from his former friend to embrace Miguel and Elena. "You're safe now." Miguel clung to them both, his small frame trembling with relief and residual fear. "I knew you'd come," he whispered. "I solved the puzzle." "What puzzle?" Elena asked, brushing sand from his hair with trembling hands. "The oasis. It's in the pattern of the stars you showed me," he told Tariq, "and in the old photo in your study. The two boys. I figured out where we were." Tariq looked down at his son with wonder and pride. "You truly are extraordinary," he said softly. Hassan watched this exchange from where he was being secured by Ziad's men, his expression shifting from rage to something more complex. Perhaps the first recognition that his greatest manipulation had created something genuine that he himself could never engineer or control. "You've won nothing," he called out as they prepared to depart. "The authorities will unravel everything. Your empire will still fall, Tariq." Tariq regarded his former friend with something like pity. "The empire doesn't matter anymore," he replied simply. "I found something far more valuable." As they boarded the helicopters that would take them to safety, Miguel nestled between Elena and Tariq, his small hand clasping one of each of theirs. The simple gesture symbolized everything that had changed, the transaction that had become connection, the arrangement that had become family. "What happens now?" Miguel asked as the helicopter lifted above the storm-washed landscape. Elena and Tariq exchanged glances over his head, a look of shared purpose and understanding that needed no words. "We build something new," Elena told him, squeezing his hand. "Together. A legacy of our own choosing," Tariq added, "one based on truth, not manipulation." 3 months later, the newly established Phoenix Foundation headquarters opened in Chihuahua, a repurposed wing of Tariq's estate. What had begun as a tentative idea during their desert hideaway had blossomed into a bold vision, a foundation dedicated to protecting financial whistleblowers and supporting families victimized by corporate fraud. Eleanor stood at the podium, addressing the gathered press and dignitaries with the confidence that had once made her a rising star on Wall Street. Beside her stood Tariq, transformed from the isolated tycoon he had once been. Behind them both, Miguel watched proudly, Fatima, now the Foundation's head of family services, at his side. "The Phoenix Foundation represents a new beginning," Eleanor explained to the assembled crowd. Built from the ashes of corporate greed and personal vendetta, it stands for the belief that transparency and ethical practice must be the foundation of global finance. Our mission is twofold, Tariq continued seamlessly, their presentation reflecting the partnership they had forged. To provide legal and financial protection to those who expose corporate wrongdoing, and to support the families often devastated in the aftermath of such exposure. The irony wasn't lost on either of them, that Hassan's elaborate scheme had ultimately created not just a genetic heir, but a revolution in how Tariq viewed his wealth and position. The man who had once acquired Elena as a temporary asset had discovered something no transaction could secure: family, purpose, love. Hassan Malouf now awaited trial in multiple jurisdictions, his remaining empire dismantled. The evidence Elena had meticulously compiled had exposed not just his vendetta against Tariq, but decades of financial manipulation and fraud. "We believe that true power lies not in wealth or control," Elena concluded her address, "but in the courage to rewrite one's destiny, to create family from circumstance, to transform manipulation into authentic connection." Later that evening, as celebrations continued around them, Elena found Tariq on the terrace overlooking the estate grounds. In the gardens below, Miguel was explaining his latest computational theory to an impressed group of tech executives. The boy's extraordinary mind continuing to flourish under the nurturing of both his parents. "He's thriving," Elena observed, joining Tariq at the balustrade. "We all are," Tariq replied, his hand finding hers in a gesture that had become natural between them. The gold band on her finger caught the evening light, a recent addition symbolizing their decision to formalize the family they had unexpectedly formed. "When I stood on that auction platform," Elena reflected, "I never imagined this outcome. When I placed that bid," Tariq added with a gentle squeeze of her hand, "I thought I was purchasing a temporary solution. Instead you found what you truly needed," Elena finished, "what we both needed." Below them, Miguel looked up and waved excitedly, pointing to something on his tablet. Both parents waved back, sharing a smile at his enthusiasm. "Hassan was wrong about one fundamental thing," Tariq observed. "He believed everything was strategy, manipulation, control." "But some things can't be engineered," Elena agreed. "They can only be discovered when you're brave enough to let go of control." The desert stretched beyond the estate boundaries, vast and unchanged by the human dramas that had played out across its surface. Somewhere in that expanse lay the oasis where everything had culminated, where they had confronted not just an enemy, but their own fears about vulnerability, trust, and the nature of family. "What happens when the story of our beginning eventually comes out?" Elena asked, practical as always. "About Miguel's conception, the auction, all of it?" Tariq considered this thoughtfully. "We tell the truth," he said simply, "that families are formed in many ways, that what matters isn't how we came together, but the choice we make every day to remain together." And for Miguel, her greatest concern remained her son's well-being. "We tell him that he is the best of both of us, not because Hassan engineered it, but because love and respect shaped what genetics began." Tariq's certainty on this point had been one of the qualities that had ultimately won her heart, his unwavering commitment to Miguel's emotional health above all else. As the stars emerged above them, the same stars that had witnessed generations of desert inhabitants creating and breaking alliances, forming and dissolving bonds, Eleanor and Tariq stood together in comfortable silence. Their journey from transaction to transformation was still unfolding, but the foundation had been laid in truth rather than calculation. The Phoenix Foundation would stand as a testament to their shared vision, a legacy far more meaningful than corporate empires or financial dynasties. And Miguel would grow with the knowledge that he was loved, not for the genetic potential Hassan had engineered, but for himself, the extraordinary person emerging from the crucible of their unique family story. In the end, what had begun as Eleanor's desperate sacrifice for her son's medical care had transformed into a new beginning for all of them. The auction that had seemed to represent her ultimate surrender of control had ironically set her on the path to genuine empowerment. The man who had purchased her had ultimately recognized her true value beyond any transaction. Together, they had discovered that real power lay not in wealth or manipulation or control, but in the courage to remain authentic even when deception seemed easier. To let go of predetermined narratives and write their own story, one in which past wounds became the foundation for future strength, and unexpected connections became the bedrock of a family that defied conventional definition. As they turned to rejoin the celebration, their hands still linked, both understood that their greatest victory hadn't been against Hassan or corporate enemies, but against the limitations of their own past experiences. They had rewritten not just their individual destinies, but created a shared future that neither could have imagined alone. It was a legacy worthy of the name they had chosen, Phoenix, rising transformed from the ashes of what had been destroyed, stronger and more beautiful for having endured the fire.